purpose isn't what you do, who you are, and how you serve other people. It's how you live. And so,
Hmm.
and that is often very intertwined with the lessons that you have, the soul contracts that you've made, the blueprint that you're coming into.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so,
Hey there, beautiful souls. It's your girl, Allie, and we're back at it again for another episode of Living Life Consciously. We have a very special guest lined up for you today, and I'm stoked to get started. So without further ado, Leslie, say hey.
Hi, I'm Leslie, your co-host, also known as Light Being Love, an eternal spiritual being having a temporary human experience. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And Elyse, can you say hey?
hi, I'm Elyse. I'm a coach, medium, uh, human, living this experience. I'm super happy to be here. I'm really excited to chat.
We're excited to chat with you too. And for our audience that may not be familiar, I'd like to give a little bit of a formal introduction. So get ready to dive into the depth of mind, body, and spirit with our extraordinary guest, Elyse Cathrea. Elyse isn't just your average wellness coach. She's a beacon of light guiding others on a journey of self-discovery and healing. As a certified wellness coach, somatic embodiment practitioner, intuitive reader, and yoga and meditation instructor, she's here to help you move from chaos to calm, from disconnection to alignment. Through her unique mind-body-spirit approach, Elyse empowers her clients to reconnect with their true selves and unlock their deepest desires. From unraveling mental and emotional blocks to nurturing the spirit, she's dedicated to bringing you back home to yourself. But hold on, folks, this isn't your typical self-help guru. Elyse dances to the beat of her own drum, preferring podcasts over fiction and finding joy in the simplest moments with her two fur babies. With intuition as her compass and empathy as her guide, Elyse is on a mission to create a self-inclusive space for everyone to explore their inner wisdom and reconnect with their highest selves. So join us as we embark on a journey of self-discovery with the one and only Elyse Cathrea. Yay!
Yay. So
You-
happy to be here.
Me, yes, definitely. Can you please share with us a bit about your journey and what led you to become a certified wellness coach, somatic embodiment practitioner, intuitive reader, and yoga instructor?
Yes. Anytime somebody asks me that, I'm like, oh gosh, how long should I
It's like
spend
a
on this?
loaded
'Cause we could-
question, right?
So I was born on. Yeah, so Cole's Notes, I guess, is I worked in human resources. I have a bachelor's degree. I did the corporate 9 to 5, which, a lot of people talk about, nothing wrong with that. For me, there was lots of things that I really enjoyed, and working in human resources, there was a lot of things that I learned and developed. I was in that role for, well, that career path for like 12 years almost.
Okay.
And it gave me a lot of skills that I wouldn't have had I not gone down that road. So I am really grateful for that experience. And I did a lot of coaching. I did a lot of public speaking, things that like I never really thought would be something I would do. And so over time, I just realized this isn't a fit. I knew that intuitively, I think, for a long period of time, but it just wasn't. It wasn't. The path wasn't clear. I didn't know what else to do. And so, yeah, over time, I started to move towards, I think I need to leave this. I think I need to, do something else. I was really drawn to, at that point, spirituality. I was mostly just practicing for myself, doing little readings for friends and things like that, kind of on my own spiritual journey, and feeling like there was lots of aspects of my life that I was really confident in, but I felt this like, I don't know who I am. And like, how
Hmm.
do I exist in the world? Like there was these kind of like existential things that were mulling about. And so I really following my intuition on things that I was interested in. And so that led me to do a yoga teacher training. I didn't even really have a solid yoga practice when I took that. So I literally Googled like yoga teacher training for beginner yogis because I was just not like I can't do a headstand. I can't do any of that stuff. Um,
Ugh.
I found a really wonderful inclusive training, and that was really great. And it led me into the body in a different way than I think I had experienced before. I was fit. I always played sports, loved the gym, but it was a really different experience just being present with my body, moving slowly and intentionally.
I can
I
relate.
ended up, yeah, yeah. I ended up leaving human resources and started to transition into more of a coaching. I was like, okay, maybe I can do the coaching route. And so I took, I think I've taken now like 3 different certifications
Oh, wow.
in the coaching realm because I've just kept wanting to build. And I think with each certification, it's taken me a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And not long after I started that experience of leaving my job, my dad passed away. And it was
Hmm.
semi unexpected, but intuitively, there were some pieces that I knew were coming. And
I'm so sorry for your
like,
loss.
thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah. The grief experience, it was right before COVID.
Oh,
And
man.
Mm.
yeah, and I think my dad's spirit was probably very strategic in that because I don't
He's
think
like,
he
I
would
don't
have.
want to go through this earth
It's like,
experience.
I'm out. This is not going to be for me. Um, so yeah, so when he passed, it was shocking in a lot of ways, and
Hmm.
a really interesting experience of being an intuitive, being a medium, speaking to spirit, speaking to energy all the time, and also going through the very real experience of grief and how that manifested in my body. I started to unearth a chronic illness that was there through the stress and the intense grief. I really developed a process that was somatic embodiment through my grief experience that I didn't categorize as that because I had these really big, intense emotions. And I'm really good at thinking about it and then, therapizing myself and packing like unpacking my belief systems and all these things,
Hmm.
all of the kind of traditional self-help work. And I realized that like that was helpful to a degree with my grief experience, but one of the ways in which I moved through it was like through movement. And so I would like come into my office, I'd close the blinds, flip the lights off, and I could feel the the emotion and the grief in my body, and I didn't know what to do with it. And so I just started moving. And I would like roll up my mat and be like, I'm gonna do some yoga. And I would do like kind of, a handful of just intuitive movements. The emotion would come up, I'd have a cry on my floor, and then I experienced this relief afterwards. And so,
Hmm.
to summarize it, it really led me down a path of, for me, living with a chronic illness or an experiencing a chronic illness and experiencing really intense emotion and experiencing the spirit side of things. I was like, the three can't live separately. And I really wanted to go and learn more about the body connection with emotion and our experience and our mental health and the spiritual experience that we're having as well, and how they all interconnect. And so that then led me to move towards a somatic embodiment. So I'm almost finished my second year, which then I'll be a somatic therapist, I think, would
Okay.
be the traditional thing. But yeah, really, it's, for me now, the work that I focus on is a coaching lens that can take a headspace, mental focus, but it can, and, we're working towards goals and where's our blocks and all those sorts of things. But it also takes a spiritual perspective as well of like,
Sure.
where am I being led? And then inherently it has to include the body because all of the things with our spirit and with our emotions also live in our body. And for me, that's the piece that people tend to miss the most because I think societally we've just been taught to ignore the way that our body actually has a lot to say. It has a lot of wisdom and it drives us just as much as our thoughts and our belief systems and just as much as our spirit does. And so for me, I really love incorporating all three in different ways throughout my business and practice and my own life.
That sounds amazing. So, how do you define living life consciously, and what role does intuition play in this lifestyle?
That is a big question.
Mhm.
Living life consciously for me is it's not the it's the presentness. It's being able to move through the present experience in a way in which we're just with it. I think whenever we're in the past or we're in the future, which I say all this as if like, oh, it's so easy. And it's not. This is such a practice. And I think we get really down on ourselves and we're taught to get down on ourselves
Mhm.
if we're like, we have anxiety or we're stressed or it's like, it's not as easy to just, in my opinion, say like, just don't think those thoughts, right? There's reasons why our brain is doing the things that it's doing. And so I really honor that and we work with it. So for me, it's consciousness and living consciously is being able to support our mind, our body, our spirit, and being as present as possible. And usually it's the toughest when the hard things are happening. And so if the hard things are happening, the scary things are happening, it's how can I support the challenge that's coming up, either mentally, physically, through my body, or spiritually. For me, the intuition piece, they're also intermingled. And so often people in readings and stuff will be like, how do I develop my intuition? And so often, I have my own belief systems, but even spirit will so often say, like, using the feelings that we get in our bodies are often one of the first ways in which we can really connect with our intuition. So I love encouraging people
Okay.
to, like, what do I want to eat? And just like, what feels good right now? Use those like small little things. What way do I want to drive to the grocery store? And then it's like, ooh, I get that like internal feeling in my belly that says go left instead of right. Okay, I'm going to do that and see what happens. So for me, that's also being really present, because we're just kind of, rather than saying, well, this is the fastest way to drive to the grocery store, it's like, I just feel like maybe I'll go left instead of right. It's like, ooh, wild and crazy, but it allows us to build up some safety with the experience of being present and of being connected to our whole selves and our spirit. I don't know if that answered your
I
question.
love that answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that was a
I
great
have
answer
another
too.
question, or Allie, if you want to, I can.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Okay. How can people connect with their intuition to make more aligned and conscious decisions? I hope that doesn't run too much into my first question, because I have plenty of questions. I just
No,
didn't organize my
no.
questions very well.
Yeah. I think that like I said, I think for me, it's everything comes back to the oftentimes people have a hard time listening to their intuition. We're all intuitive beings, right? We all have an intuition. We can all connect to spirit. We can all like, I am not special in that way. I equate it to like singing, right? Everybody can open their mouth and make a noise to some degree, right? Some
Right.
people are born and they sound like the Adeles of the world. Other people, we got to work at it a little bit more. We got to like build that muscle. We might have a cap, but like I might never develop to be Adele, but I can still, build the muscle and improve. To me, connection to spirit, intuition, it's the exact same thing. That a baseline ability is always there. It's just to the degree in which we develop and how much time and effort we want to put into it. So it's open and available to everybody, and nobody's special in that sense. Um, Oftentimes, I find people are wanting to develop their intuition around big things. Is this relationship going to work out? What is my life purpose? What am I? And it's these big questions that, fair, I ask the exact same things. But those were the things that I had a lot harder time deciphering and would have challenges in my trust of the answer because it felt really big to my system. So that's why I encourage people to play with it in the small ways that don't feel like an internal threat. And this is why for me somatics is so important. Somatics, just to, kind of be clear about, it's the connection and, space within the body, the nervous system, the way in which we respond to trauma, the way in which we respond to stress, also sorts of things. So all of that lives in our bodies. And
Mhm.
when we are asking a big question like, what's my life's purpose? What am I supposed to be? Should I quit my job? Like that can bring up so much intensity in our bodies through like, oh my gosh, am I going to have enough money to pay the bills? Oh my gosh, what if I make the wrong choice? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, what if the scary thing happens, right? And so you have this intense nervous system response and you
Mhm.
tend to cut off, and this is not through any fault. Your nervous system is there to keep you alive and safe. Like it's a good thing. But when we don't have trust or connection in the intuitive nudges that we're getting, your brain's like, excuse you, you're going to quit your job right now? Like, no, you can't do that, right? What about this? What about this? And you get the fear response that comes up. So
That's so
when
true.
you build
Mhm.
the muscle with the small things, like what should I wear today, or like what route do I take to the grocery store on a Saturday afternoon, it's a lot easier to be able to listen to those nudges and build that muscle than it is to like jump into the deep end with, should I,
Yeah,
be with this person
That's
that I
such
love so
great
deeply?
advice. It really
it is
is.
good advice.
It's great advice because your body oftentimes tells you things internally, like she's saying. You know, if you want to figure out what you want to eat rather than just going for what you usually go for, like take a second to listen to your body and figure out like what does it want? What does it need? It's like I learned how to do that a while ago, and rather than just going into the kitchen with a specific thing in mind, I'll go into the kitchen, look at what I have, get quiet for a moment and go, okay, body, out of all of those things we got available, you know, like which one do you feel like you need? And then I'll go from there. And it's just really, it's a very cool process to learn how to quiet the mind and go inside and listen to your own guidance and intuition that's literally always there. We've just been so conditioned to be distracted or taught away from it or to numb it with some substance that's like it's
Totally.
society makes it hard for you to go within. But once you figure out that process, it's like a whole realization that you'll have with yourself. That's how I did. That's how it was for me anyway.
1,000%. Yeah, 1,000%. And I think that's the case with how we feel our feelings. I think it's
Yeah.
the case with how we interact with people. I think there's this, you know, every person's individual experience is different, and different things are going to be triggering, right? For some
Yes.
people, asking my body what it wants to eat and food might be a triggering thing. Okay, cool. So then don't use that as a thing. Maybe it's, there's other realms that you can use. How do I want to move my body today? What's going to feel good for that? Do I want to read a book or do I want to listen to a podcast? Like whatever, right? Oh, I'm going to pick up a new book, open it up to one of the random pages, see what's on there. Like it can be these tiny small little things regardless of what might be challenging for your nervous system. But even with emotions, right? Like we have a hard time, when we're kids, it's like you fall and then it's like, okay, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, right? We get
Right.
this messaging of like, don't feel too much, you're okay, right? And it's so well meaning. It's not to say that any of that's from a negative place at all, but it's over time, I think collectively we've really cut off our ability to feel what our body, our spirit, and our mind needs. And then we've on top of that put the stress of life and just all of the things that are happening on any given day.
Hmm.
And it makes it so that it's really tough to hear our intuition. It's really tough to hear your intuition through a dysregulated nervous system.
So
So
true.
for me, the two things do go hand in hand. It's not impossible. And it's not to say if you have anxiety or you've got some sort of, nervous system dysregulation, which I think a lot of us do, you can't. It's just that sometimes those things can be harder to decipher because the the brain and the body can speak really loud also. And for some people who, when we're developing our nervous or not our nervous system, when we're developing our intuition, the voices can get muddy and it's like, well, who's saying what and where is the wisdom coming from?
Yeah, that's so true. And I can relate so much to your story because my journey was kind of the same. It was like high amounts of stress, always on the go. I had a chronic pain condition as well. I found yoga and used that to help deal with the chronic pain. And then from learning to practice yoga for my physical self, I got in touch with my internal self. I got in touch with the spiritual self. And then from there, I started learning to meditate. And then crystals came into the picture and essential oils came into the picture. And it just like spiraled into this
Yeah.
spiritual journey that I'm just so grateful for. So I feel like I relate a lot to like mostly everything you're saying.
Wait, are,
I
are
know.
you saying yoga started your spiritual journey? Um,
Kind of, sort of. I mean, it's right there in the beginning of the timeline.
okay. I guess I never really put that to you. I know you love yoga and like are so grateful for it and what it's done for you. So yeah, that's one thing I'm missing in my life so far. So I probably need to explore that for sure.
You
But
should check that out for sure.
I think I need to. There's a lot of things I'm stretching myself thin with like the spiritual things.
They say that like half the problem of practicing yoga is just showing up on the mat. So if you could just roll out the mat, show up with the intention of practicing, that's literally
Yeah,
half
I
the
saw
battle.
that Elyse, she does you could do it from your home with Elyse. I saw that on your website, I guess, or was that on
Yeah.
Avalon Spirit? I can't
Yeah, I
remember where
think
I saw it.
on my website. Yeah, I haven't
Okay.
done it as much lately. COVID changed a lot with
Okay.
I taught in person and I do online. I don't love big classes online anymore though. Like I did that for
Mm,
a while and I found it really one or two people, I don't mind. Like if it's kind of little private sessions, I'm cool with that. The group classes I find trickier now online, so I
Okay.
don't do those as much anymore. But maybe I
Gotcha.
will again. I don't know. We'll see. I just
Okay.
kind of roll with
Okay.
it. Like,
Let's see.
eventually,
I
one
can
day I'll be like, I need to do this thing, and then I go do it. So who knows?
Listening to your inner guidance.
Yeah, yeah, I guess. So.
So let's see. Let's pull one of these questions. How do you navigate the balance between trusting intuition or using rational thinking and decision making?
Um,
Anyway.
yeah. So I
Mhm.
think I am always a big proponent of one aspect of the triangle being that mind, body, spirit triangle really can't overshadow the others. They're all equally as important and they all play an important role in our human experience. So for some people the guidance can be, well, just always trust your intuition, always just default, like trust your intuition. And I totally understand the thought process behind that, because it's like, well, it's coming from source and they probably know better in the sense of what your, what your guides want for you, or what your, plans were when you decided to incarnate here, certain experiences. I'm a big believer that things that are really meant for you, you won't miss. And so if there's an intuition of like, go do this thing, but your brain is like, yo, we are barely paying the bills and food and like things are tight,
We
and
got
you're just gonna
basic
like,
needs we need to meet, okay?
yeah, and we're just gonna like, doesn't matter, follow your intuition. I think the potential for that to go in a way that's really extra challenging can be high, because our brain might override us. Our fear response might prevent us from taking the steps that we need to take to make that work. We might be so, we might jump and do the thing, but then we're in such an intense fear response that our thoughts are really focused towards the negative outcomes, right? Again, that's all your body feel and your nervous system saying is like, I feel unsafe, this feels unsafe. And there's a million reasons why that can be the case, but I think it's important to honor that, not to say stay stuck and limit ourselves, but to say, okay, there's something in me that needs to be addressed here that's causing me to not want to take this step. So I don't have to ignore the intuition or say that I'm never going to do it, but there's also something screaming at me that's saying I'm afraid. And I don't fully love the idea of self sabotage, because I think self sabotage inherently means that something in us, we're moving towards something that we want, but there's something in us that doesn't feel safe with that because we don't understand it, or we've never experienced it before, or logically we don't know how it's going to work. And so that response inhibits us from taking the steps to move towards the thing that we're trying to. And that's what self sabotage is. We do the opposite of what we want.
Hmm.
But the basis of that is lack of safety. So, like, we can't shit on ourselves for feeling unsafe. Right? That's a primitive response. We have to tend to, why does that feel unsafe? Love and support that, and then allow it to feel and find that safety before we just like barrel through, because that's when things don't tend to stick, or they don't work out in the long run, or it's a lot bumpier because we're just not feeling as prepared. So for me, it's like, if I'm really feeling that resistance to something, I'm going to pause and honor that before I follow the intuition. And that starts to
Awesome.
change over time, because the more I can trust the intuition and the more positive experiences I have with that, then the less afraid I am of trusting it. And then it might not feel as scary to make the jump. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then it all could just be, lessons in the blueprint from the get go that you're just going through the
Totally.
motions of like,
That's soul
Totally.
contract, man. That's soul contract.
Yeah. Yeah.
okay,
The
I love
fine
that
print on
answer.
those bad boys can be tricky.
So, how do you prepare yourself mentally and spiritually before connecting with someone's higher self?
So before any readings, usually I'll just kind of take, 10, 15 beforehand. I like to just kind of come in my office, close my door, make sure my dogs are settled because they're just, can be distracting little lovely beings. And then, really it's just I try to kind of have a moment to myself. And that can look really different because like as I've been, going on and on about, I really tend to what my needs are at any given moment. So sometimes that's like, oh, I'm going to meditate for a few minutes. If my brain's feeling really scattered, meditation actually, my brain doesn't love it. So I'll just maybe do like a little bit of movement or some breathing, or um, sometimes it's even just like I'll pick up a book or, tend to something, but still have kind of quiet space. And then whenever I'm starting out a reading with someone, I always like to obviously connect in with, typically my readings are um focused more on like the spirit self or the higher self rather than, my grandpa who passed away. Certainly though, can pop in, but that doesn't seem to be the default of A, why people book with me, or B, why like where my guides like to go. And I'm guessing it's because I live in much more of a coachy kind of helping world that often it's like, I'm feeling really stuck. I don't know what to do next. I don't know where to go next. How do I develop my intuition more? What guides are around me? You know, yeah, kind of stuckness and things like that tend to be a real theme for folks that book with me. And I really like working with people's like spirit selves. The default language is higher self. To me, that implies hierarchy. And so I don't always love
Oh,
that term.
I understand.
Right. It's not that they're like a lot of I'm part of the spiritual world and I love it, but I also find the wellness and spiritual world uses terms or kind of gets like hooked in these ideas that I think skew our relationship with them. So
What do you mean
what
by
I mean
that?
by that, yeah. So what I mean by that is like when people talk about our higher selves or our guides, it's like there's for me there became this like implication of they know better than me, they know more than me, they
Okay.
are the higher self, they have the higher perspective. And while that might be true, they're not also living in your life. Right. And so we did actually, I'm part of a group where we have a YouTube series called Spirit Coffee Talk. And we did a Spirit Coffee Talk. It was this spring for sure. I can't remember exactly when it was, about like, what happens when you disagree with your guides? Do your guides ever disagree with each other? Like, is everybody on the same page or are there
Oh,
differences? And I think there's differences. I think that different guides, different energies that are around us have different agendas or connections to us. So my dad in spirit, I don't ask him about like, where am I going? What's my purpose? Like, I don't ask him those things because he is there from a different perspective than, say, my spirit self or my guides. So, all to say, I think that like when I'm doing readings, I love connecting with people's higher selves or spirit selves because that's like your direct line, right? Like they know your shit. They know what's up. They tend to be very direct. It's not
uh-huh.
it's just kind of like what are we doing here? And I like that because I think it serves us in a way where we can like tangibly move and make decisions. I always used to get really frustrated when I would have readings and it was like very ethereal things. Um, like your guides are with you. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't like, what do I do with that? Right. And I think that's something that, I've had challenges with on my own journey is like, I have a very literal, like analytical brain
Okay.
that asks a lot of questions and is like, yeah, but what about this? Yeah, but what about that? And that's shifted and evolved into part of, I would say my offerings is trying to take that broader, higher perspective of like that mind, body, spirit of, okay, my guides are saying this, my intuition is saying this, but my body's saying this, and my brain has a whole other story. And for me, when I wasn't looking at all three in my life, I found that I couldn't move forward in certain ways. I would always end up replaying similar issues. Once I started to take that broader perspective, things shifted, my experience shifted. And so
Okay.
I like my readings to take that because I know people come to readings for answers, and a lot of times it's not just a cut and dry, like, spirit tells you this, and then you do the thing, and all is well. Um, and I don't know that that serves people in the way that I would like it to. So, yeah.
Understood. I have a burning question that has been persisting in my brain. So you
Yes.
talk about how you do readings with people. So without
Mhm.
giving any like, identifiable information away, can you share with us maybe your favorite reading or the most
Ooh.
profound message that ever came through from spirit during a reading?
Hmm. So what's coming up? Um, it's more of actually a theme that
Okay.
I've seen, that like one-offs didn't necessarily, um, I was kind of like, oh, okay. And then as it emerged for a number of people, um, I found it to be really interesting. And so it's kind of twofold. It's one that so many people will be like, what's my purpose? Where am I going? Like what am I doing? And they want like a label. They want to like, you're gonna be a Reiki practitioner. You're going to be a bleh. And
Mhm.
one of the things that Spirit was saying was like, you guys gotta get rid of the labels. Like this idea of like, I am a this or you're doing a that or here is a thing is just a made up construct. Like with it, what does it matter? Just do the
Yes, like,
things. And
it's
I'm
about
like,
the journey and not the destination. Would that be a
well,
good?
that, but also like, why do you have to say I am a medium? And like, that is who you are. Like, it's making it your identity. It's making it as if it is a badge of honor that you must wear in order to be seen or have people understand you or, and in fairness, like my analytical brain was like, yeah, but like, how do I market myself? Or how do
Right,
I
right.
like,
You need
I
to
gotta
put
pay the
something on the
bills.
business card, right?
Yeah. Or people are like, what do you do? And you're like, I don't use label. Like people are gonna be like, great, I don't know what you do. Um, or like where you're going or whatever. So,
Mm.
and sometimes I'll push back on them and be like, that's a nice idea, but like we're also humans. So like, ugh. And really, what came from that was like we're really starting to deconstruct this idea of labeling very specific things in who we are and how we show up in the world and what we do. And it's okay to not have this like clear cut box around what your purpose is or who you are, and where this kind of evolved to and where it really started to hit me is that people's ideas of purpose has from what I've seen become like, what am I doing for work? And Spirit eventually kind of evolved the message into like, how are you living? How are you showing up in the world? For some
Mm.
people, this idea of like the 9 to 5 is, blah, bad, and you're working for somebody else, and da-da. That might be totally great for somebody because your purpose is to foster an amazing, safe home for your family that is stable and has, the ability to go and play on the weekends and do things that you want to do or whatever, right? Your purpose isn't what you do, who you are, and how you serve other people. It's how you live. And so,
Hmm.
and that is often very intertwined with the lessons that you have, the soul contracts that you've made, the blueprint that you're coming into.
Okay,
And
okay.
so through the process of labeling everything as like, you have to do this and you have to call yourself this and you're doing this for work and da-da. Like I call myself a multi-passionate because at any given time I'm like, ooh, I like to do this thing. And then I go over there and I do it. And usually when I follow that is when things happen more easily than when I'm like, okay, but what am I putting on my website? How am I marketing myself? Like it doesn't, it puts up these like barriers that I end up bumping into and losing the flow of my purpose is that I like to support people in reconnecting with themselves. Sometimes that's through work, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's through, talking with somebody at the grocery store and having this like really wonderful connection point and both people leave and are like, oh, that was really nice. Like that was a nice connection. Or like, wow, it's such a beautiful day. I live in Canada. And so like we're emerging from the winter and it's, sunny um and like standing outside in the backyard and like feeling the sun on my skin and being like, oh my gosh, that feels good. That's in alignment with my purpose because it's allowing me to feel embodied and show up in the world in a different way. So um that for me has been a really interesting piece of wisdom from spirit that's unfolded over time. Um, and it can be tough to
I
break
like
down the
that theme.
constructs, but it's a really cool theme, and it seems to be building, and it seems to be more and more people that I do readings for are experiencing something similar.
I
I
love
love that.
that. Oh, jinx.
Mhm. Yeah.
It was reminding me of the phrase, people won't remember you for what you say, but they'll remember you for how you made them feel. So it's
Mm.
almost like a, stop thinking so much about everything and just like show up in the present moment.
Mhm.
It sounds so simple, but yet it's so difficult. Do you have any advice for people that may be just starting out on this kind of spiritual journey, or who want to get started with yoga or meditation but don't know where to begin? What advice would you have for them?
Mm. So for me, whether we're talking about like movement, whether we're talking about our own like self development, whether we're talking about our spiritual journey, the default for me when I was starting is I want to be like, okay, I'm going to Google or like talk to somebody or read a book, and I'm going to get like a 7-step plan on like the things that I need to do to build my intuition. And that's all great and fine and well. And I think that gaining that information is helpful. What I think sometimes gets lost in translation is that we're all very different souls, we're all very different bodies, we're all very different brains, and we've all lived very different life experiences and past life experiences. And what works for one person might not work for you. That doesn't mean you're broken, that doesn't mean they're better or you're wrong or anything like that. I find that's where in the like development world, self-development world, spiritual development world, self-care world, there's a lot of like, do this and all will be fixed, all will be well, you'll be healthy and perfect and da-da. And it's like that's not honoring our experience. So for me, it's Google the things, listen to the podcasts, do the whatever, read the books, and then play with them. You don't have to take it so seriously, and you can allow yourself to feel into like, if it doesn't make you feel expansive when you're trying to open up or connect with yourself, if it doesn't make you feel like, oh, I can lean into that, it might not be for you. And then can you turn towards something else? It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong or that you're not good enough, or it's everybody's so different. Like I said, for me, a lot of in the spiritual development world, it's like, well, you need to meditate. When I'm in a state where my body feels extra taxed, maybe there's lots going on, maybe, like chronic illness wise, there's some things happening. Maybe I just like haven't slept good.
Yeah.
Sitting and meditating feels like torture. And it doesn't like that can be the case having meditated for an hour the day before. And then one day I go to do that and it feels awful. My mind races, my body feels uncomfortable. I just want to like, ah. I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, well, I suck. I'm a bad medium now.
That's more of a time to move.
Meditate. Exactly. Yeah. So it's like honor what feels good and do that.
Yes.
And play with it and see how that feels. And then if it's like, oh, actually, today it felt great, but tomorrow doesn't, then change it up tomorrow, right? It doesn't have to be so structured.
So
and
be
serious.
flexible, be fluid.
Totally. Yeah.
I love that advice because, I mean, structure is good for certain things, but when you're so rigid with it that you can't flex, I feel like that's when it becomes an issue. So being fluid and being like open to suggestion and listening to what you need in that moment, I feel like that's great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Happy to. Yeah.
Can you do me a favor and tell our audience what kind of things you have going on and where they can find you? And if they want to work with you, what should they do? Spill all your little teas and drop all your links.
Yeah. So my website is kind of a mess right now. Gonna have to work on it. It's got some stuff. It's okay. It's just not super up to date with all of the offerings that I have. So I always just say like, reach out to me by email and I'm happy to just like chat about it. Anybody who wants to connect, I'm like super happy to connect. One of the really fundamental pillars of all of this work for me is to ensure it's accessible for people and that it feels safe for you and okay. So I'll put the caveat of anybody who's interested in working with me. If you're like, oh, I don't know, and I want to chat first, I'm happy to do that. And I really like to do that because I want to make sure that it feels right for everyone. So yeah, I do one-on-one readings. All of them are online. So, people can connect with me that way. Again, it usually tends to be kind of that spirit self, guides, and all of that good stuff that come through in those readings. And so yeah, people can reach out via my website. Those aren't on the website yet. I tried to change things around and I messed it up. So it's like, I'm just going to back away slowly and not mess it up even more. So yeah, you can reach out to me via email. You can also book through the Avalon Spirit website, and there's lots of wonderful other people there that offer different things as well. So yeah, readings. And then I work with people one-on-one as well through coaching programs. So I do one-off somatic sessions with folks. It tends to be that clients want to somatic work. I have to just caveat is that it's very slow. And it has to be, because we're tending to your nervous system. So anything too much, too fast is a trauma, right? And so when we're making shifts and changes, and that can be like little trauma, not big T, little t trauma. So I don't want to misspeak there. But when we're shifting things somatically, especially for somebody who hasn't spent a lot of time connected with their body, it can be a slower process. Doesn't mean it's not impactful. It just means it feels really simple and really slow and often annoying to your brain. So a lot of times somatically, I'll work with people in a coaching package, which is 4 months as a minimum to really get connected with your body, your brain, and your spirit to see, how we can support it in moving forward. A lot of times people will come to coaching with a specific goal around like, I'm working towards this thing and I want that mind, body, spirit support of it. Other people are like, I just feel really stuck in my life. I feel stressed and I feel like I don't know where to go and I need support, and we can navigate it together. So it can be really specific goals. It can also be really broad things. And so we would meet weekly and connect in the ways in which is going to support you. It's very individualized. And then I also do one-off somatic sessions. So people are like, I don't know how I feel about this, but I want to give it a try. You can reach out and we can connect about one-off somatic sessions too. A lot of my coaching clients, we work through some of the big stuff, and then we do like little kind of tune-ups along the way as they just need some support. Then they book in one-on-one as well. So those are kind of the three main ways. I am looking at a group program type of situation.
Tell me about that.
Well, I can't because it hasn't formed itself yet.
Oh,
the intention is really like the same idea of a coming home to ourselves. I'm feeling really stuck. I'm feeling really dysregulated in my life. I'm feeling really disconnected from myself, and finding our way back to ourselves, but through community rather than that one-on-one. So it's not a fully formed piece yet, but it's starting to come together. So that probably won't be, I would say, until the fall, most likely.
Okay, it's good to plant that seed now and get that out there so you can start manifesting
like a beautiful thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about yoga? Are you offering that anywhere at the moment?
So not in person. No, I lost my studio space through COVID. So that is, we just moved recently. So looking into figuring that out. But if anybody's looking for that one-on-one support, through a movement practice, I've broadened it a little bit to a movement practice because I also offer some clinical somatic exercises within that, which aren't technically yoga in the same sense. So yeah, it's kind of more of a like yogic movement somatic practice. And I'm happy to support people in that if they're looking for that one-on-one. Again, that's a little bit easier when it's small.
Cool. And I will include the links to everything that you just mentioned down in the video description box below. So if you'd like to work with Elyse, make sure to check that out.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a famous question that we ask all of our guests. Are you ready?
Okay, I am.
What is your greatest hope for the future of humanity?
I've been sitting with this actually a lot lately because I feel like, because when you look around, you're like,
we're living in a shit show.
The human brain is like, what in the actual F is going on right now? So I feel like it's a common question for people. And I think our nervous systems are all like, also, this feels very unsafe. What are we doing? And
what is happening?
We don't necessarily have the answers either, which can feel even clunkier, right? There's so much uncertainty. So for me, we actually just talked about this on Spirit Coffee Talk, but
synchronicity.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk about like the 5D, 3D split, right?
Yes.
And like, oh, we're moving into this 5D reality. And I don't see it as separate of the world that we're living in now. I think it's a different way in which we exist in it. And for me,
Oh,
community and connection and the way in which we support ourselves and each other is going to become fundamental in that, because I think
okay.
there's been part of the issue is we've become very individualized, which is why, like, when you reached out and you were talking about this community that you have, I know nothing about Discord servers. So
It's
when I
okay.
got onto it, I was like, oh, I don't know. And then I like slowly backed away. Um, but I love that there's community and space to
Yes.
connect, right? And I think that for me, I'm seeing more and more of that unfold. And that brings me a lot of hope, because I think through community is how we find safety. It's how we find connection. It's how we find greater connection to everything else that is. And I think that's the ball that gets us rolling into a very different experience on this earth. And so I hold a lot of hope in that, even when things feel kind of crazy town and we're like, what the actual? Um, Knowing that I have people, and I will say too, just kind of as a side note, I've seen a lot of um, in the spirit world a theme of people's community drastically changing.
Oh,
So there's been a lot of, I've seen it in readings, I've seen it in people around me, I've seen it in my own life, relationships changing and who we have around us within our community changing.
okay.
And that can be hard because it feels like, well, then who do I have? But it's really clearing space for, I think we need to be realigned in our community connections. Who is within our life, as we become more conscious of who we are and connected with who we are, if that might we might change, and that's okay. And there needs to be a little bit of a shift in who we have around us, and it's not a bad thing, it's not right or wrong, it can be hard. But the more we're in alignment with our community that surrounds us, and it gives us that, again, expansive, like, heart opening feeling, I think the bigger that ripple out effect is, and that's how we change all of the things that have been really not working well.
Yeah, I can testify to the experience of being with a community on with the Hello Alley Discord, and continuing my spiritual growth from where I was to that point and to where I'm at now. I mean, look at us here having these spiritual
I
conversations with
know.
awesome people like you, and
Yes.
it's been really amazing, and it's awesome to have the support and the like-mindedness to have that, because I think more often than not you it's harder to find that in your physical life. So yeah, but I think that that's going to change too. Like there's going to be more and more, and then people are just going to start talking and be like, hey, so like
Mhm,
the like-mindedness I think is going to extend. It's just going to
mhm.
start like covering the globe or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's been one of the, like, dare I say, silver linings of COVID, is the realization of, like, how deeply we actually need community, right? When we were all
Mm,
stuck at home and not being able to connect in the same way. Certainly online, there's a that really opened up a doorway, I think, for online community, which
I
is
agree.
beautiful because that's so important. And that, like, in-person connection and the people that, when you hug in your heart to heart, you're like, oh, I can feel who you are and I can feel that in myself, and there's a resonance there. I think it really highlighted how important that is, and beautiful.
I agree. That whole 6 feet apart thing did not work for me.
I know.
That was not fun.
I know. My nervous system in Costco really liked it, but when, the people that I want to be close to, it was tough. Yeah.
For sure. Did you have any final words of wisdom for our audience or anything that you would like to share with them?
Hmm. I think, the last piece I'll say is that um, I think we all have just really been through it the last handful of years, for many years, but, like, it's really just put a spotlight on things. And I'm really grateful for this work because it's opened up a way of being that I think is just our innate, like, it's like our factory settings, and it's the world that has the experiences that we've had in this world, this 3D world, that has changed that. It's not because you're broken, it's not because anything is wrong with you, it's not because you didn't try hard enough, or you're not good enough, or you're not spiritual enough, or anything like that. It's because everything outside of us has told us how to be, and it's kind of just unplugged the cord into who we actually are and how we inherently know how to be. So the idea of, being able to live your life in a really embodied, aligned, conscious, spiritual way, um, is so available and open to each of us. And if it's been a struggle for you, it's not your fault. The default settings are still there. It's just about kind of clearing out the stuff to reconnect into that. It's always available. And that's the primary thing that I really drive home with anybody that I'm working with is like, you are whole, you are well, and you get to connect back with that. Sometimes it takes a little time. Sometimes it takes a little, support of ourselves in different ways, but it's always available to you.
I love that. The whole "you are enough" message needs to be driven home a lot harder, because it's not said enough. The outside world and society is conditioning us since birth to feel like we always need something else. We always need this external thing, this external validation, this person of authority to tell us what's okay to do or not do. But your inner guidance and your inner self is so powerful, and I just really appreciate you bringing that message to our audience that you are enough as is right now in this moment. You are enough.
Oh, it's not working, but
trying to get the hearts.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, there you go. Super cute. All right. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate everybody joining. Thank you, Leslie, for co-hosting. Thank you, Elyse, for being our guest. And for our audience that's here, please do us a favor. Click that like button, smash that subscribe, ring our little notification bell, drop a lovely comment down below, and share this video with your family and friends to help us spread the good word. Thank you so much. As I said earlier, all the links to ways to get in touch with Elyse will be in the video description box below, so please make sure to check that out.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you so much. Much love, peace, and namaste.